idea of the folks that worked on Basecamp, which was a training program for people who are interested in learning about systems theory, thinking, change. And the idea was that a lot of those Basecamp practitioners were wanting some support after the training with how do they really bring this into the workplace. And so Jen had this idea of having a coaching offering coming from the leaders in our community, and that it would also be a way for us to practice reflect on our practice together. And then as we talked about it, we thought, well, if we're going to do systems coaching, maybe we should do co-coaching so that we have more than a one-on-one dynamic, but a couple of coaches and at least 2 or 3 coachees together in a pod and working together to learn from each other. Also, the hope was that the coachees who were paired together would build enough relationship that they could be learning buddies and check in. Like Rebecca and I that's how our relationship started. We did one project together, and then we checked in every week for years. And now we've been checking in for 8 years, and you and I go on bike rides and talk about the work. And I think so many of us have learned that that's an important part of the practice, and we wanted to kind of create conditions for these people to get mentorship and coaching support from senior practitioners and get a little bit of a context to build relationship with somebody in a similar space of work that they are in, and hopefully build a long-term peer relationship for themselves. And so it was a 6-month pilot. We had we put a call out to as many different communities that we could think of that might have folks who are interested in. It was free for the coachees. The coaches got a stipend. Most of them worked together. We had one who worked solo with 2 practitioners. And I think everybody met 6 times-ish over 6 months. And we had some learning sessions along the way for the coaches to talk to each other, which was really interesting. And folks were saying, what did you do in your first session? And someone would share, and then, oh, that's an interesting idea. So it helped the coaches get ideas for their own practice, like you were talking about with facilitating. And it seemed like it was pretty successful. I mean, it was a pilot, so it wasn't perfect. We learned a lot, but I think folks got value on all sides, and it also helped deepen relationships and build some new connections in the community. Where folks got together and worked with more junior emerging practitioners, there was a lot of reflection from those folks that it was really valuable just to get to be in that kind of field, if you will, that kind of space, with all the qualities I just described, with their coaches and another person, and that even the 1-hour sessions and the chance to practice that helped them kind of get I call it like steeping the tea. They got to steep in that way of being and then practice bringing it out into their own workplaces where they can. And to me, that's a really powerful impact, is if we can hold that kind of culture for each other, and then steepen it and go off and bring it elsewhere. And many of the senior folks, that's what we do already, but the chance to come together, it gets amplified, and then we can work edges that we're struggling with in our practice that we couldn't work anywhere else because other people are able to hold that kind of space for us, whereas we're often the ones holding that kind of space and modeling it for others. Some of them felt like they just got greater confidence in their systems knowledge. Even though our coaches, one, and did not use frameworks that much, they realized in the process that frameworks are really helpful when you're newer in a practice, and then they're like training wheels, and eventually you let the frameworks go. So I think they appreciated the chance to learn some new tools and frameworks from senior practitioners. And a big theme was that they understood more about the role of self in system, or self as instrument, as Diane Hamilton talks about it. And that the way that we show up and our presence that we bring to meetings and to our own processes, and the way that we see how we have agency in the system, how we affect it and other players, really opens up a different way of seeing that I think a lot of them reflected in their feedback that they got value from. And then also related to that was just this piece around one of the big muscles that systems thinking is building is the ability to move across levels of seeing and analysis, from the internal to the interpersonal, to the group to the institutional, from the intellectual to the felt sense to the intuitive. So I think that recognizing the value of moving across ways of seeing as essential for being a savvy systems thinker was something that a lot of folks got out of it as well.